Alright, here I'm set up on my little Rusnok mill. I'm milling out a receiver block here so I can bolt one of my receivers onto this piece of metal, and then I can clamp it to the table, and then I can just work off this block. So far I've gotten a notch cut here for the lug, and then I got a little notch here for what I was thinking about putting a, sorry, let me get around here, putting a bolt there, but I might just run a bolt in the back here all the way through. I milled this all flat, and this should be, I made sure this is all straight and everything. This milling head isn't quite trammed in. I got maybe a 1/10,000th over an inch, which is kind of annoying, but for this project it's going to be just fine. I mean, this is somewhat precise, but not super precise, not 1/10,000th difference. So what I got here is I got some layouts, and I don't have, this is aluminum. I got some layouts for the back of this receiver. I'm going to cut into it and relief that a little bit for the back of the receiver. But let me set this up here, and I'll do a little cutting and show you how this thing works. I got the speed running about right, and then I got some lubric, not this stuff, but just some WD that I'm going to use for a fluid, because I haven't gotten around to getting any cutting fluid yet. So they're a Lumitap or whatever they call it. And then sometimes I like to run a vacuum, because this is down in my basement and I don't like chips flying everywhere, so I might be running a vacuum. I'm going to get this about where I need it. Hopefully I have enough room here to, I don't know if I can mill that far back. That's the only bad thing about this little mill, is you only got so much area to mill. Not area, but so much longitudinal and vertical. You got limitations every which way, so with this little guy. But so I got this set to 110,000. So we're gonna go 110 back here, and then 260 in the middle here. 260 thousandths, or a quarter of an inch almost. So what I'm gonna do is crank this guy over, run my bit down to just touching, and then I'm going to run it back up. I got to stop here on the quill. Let's run this up a little bit. Here's my stopper. A little bit more, so I can, but we'll run this up. Zero it out. And then I don't have the fancy tooling that I want here, so let's see what I have. Kind of some backwards engineering here. So I wanted to go 110 thousandths. Zero out my gauge here. My battery's dying. One thing sucks about digital calipers. These are not expensive digital calipers. Cheapos. So I'm gonna use my little compass here. Get close. So what I can do now is I want to back this out. Here's my little compass I have set. It's not perfect, but I'll measure it here in a second. Pretty close. And I do have a gauge on the dial there, but I'm not sure exactly how accurate that is. I haven't used this machine enough. And then I'll get kind of, this is another thing, I wish I had some little feelers here, larger feelers, but go up just a little bit. That's pretty close, and this isn't going to be perfection anyways, so I'm not too worried about it. So we can start cutting here. So I can run that down, lock the quill. Alright, so I'm ready to cut. I'm probably gonna, I got my depth set here. I'm gonna back up. This isn't gonna be, I'm gonna actually start back here first. This isn't gonna be, like I said, I'm not doing precision here. So I mean, it's fairly precise, but it's not super precise, so spray a little lubricant on there. Make this cut. Alright, so I'm ready to cut. I'm going to turn the vacuum on so I don't have chips flying everywhere, and I'm going to start cutting. Back this camera up a little bit, just getting kind of shaky, so my table isn't the solidest, but it works pretty good. Alright, there's my first pass. I'm going to set this camera on a different stand. So I'm going to take a few more cuts here, cut out my first notch. I can go into my other notch here a little bit, but I'll cut it out, finish it up, and then I'll come back. Alright, so now I got my edge finder set up. I'm just going to find my edges, and this is 1 1/4 inch exactly, so I'll find my edge, and then I'll compensate because my edge finder is 200 thousandths thick, so to get to the center I'll take off 100 thousandths, and then that'll be the center, or my quill will be lined up with the edge of the piece, and then I can try and dial in on my analog dials here, and we'll see how close I get. I'll find the center here and see how close we are. We're going a little fast, but that's okay. And I'll zero my dial out once I get close here. Another thing I don't like about this little mill is it uses the DA100 collets, and so each time you want to change a piece out, you gotta change a collet. So there's the edge. We'll see how close. Zero my dial out, and we'll try it again. Much. And I'm pretty dang close. So pop the quill up and see if I left just enough room in my collet there, and we'll go 100 thousandths in, which is 1 revolution on this guy. So we go 1 revolution. So there, now our centering tool there should be right on the edge, exactly on the edge of that. What I'm going to do now is, now that I got it dialed in, I'm going to back this out a turn or two, and then I'm going to switch and put my centering drill in there, and then I'll dial back to my edge 0, and then I'll dial in 625 thousandths, and I'll double check it with my caliper, and if I am where I want to be, I will drill a hole back where my hole needs to be. I got to measure this, my length measurement here yet, to get it exactly where I want to be, but I will get all that set up, and then we'll continue from there. Alright, I have this thing set up, and I put my center drill in there, and I'm on the edge of the piece. I'm going to crank in 625 thousandths and see how close I am. I just put a mark kind of where my hole needs to be. It's 8 inches, but it's an angled hole on this particular action. Here we go. I'm going to crank it in 625, so each turn on my little handle here is 100 thousandths, so I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'll go 25 thousandths. There's 25 thousandths. Alright, so what I didn't do was double check my measurement, which I will do right now. Crank my calipers out to 625, 0 mount, 625, and we'll see how close I am. I'll just put a little score there with my, I know some people are probably saying, oh my god, he's scoring it, but these are cheap calipers. It's not, I'm not too worried about it. And it's aluminum, and these calipers are way harder than aluminum. So we'll go down here, lock the quill, and I look pretty dang close to center line there, so I'm going to go over to my 8-inch mark, and I will drill my hole, drill my center hole. I can do that quick. Let's just turn it on and go for it. A little fluid on there. And I'm going to crank my quill stop is a little high here, so I'm going to crank it down. I'm going to make a pretty good cut with my center drill here. Not that I need to go really that deep, but just for the hell of it. So there we go. So there I have my hole marked, and now I just need to do a quarter-inch hole there. My side to side isn't going to matter on this when I put it in this jig. I'm going to mill this hopefully so it fits tight in the back end and it fits tight up here in the front end. And you know, I can cant my screw hole any which way, forward and backward, and it's not going to make a difference going this way. So I'll drill that out and see where we get. Alright, so here we are again. I got my hole drilled, and I decided to do an angled hole, and on my little mini mill here I had to do some fancy, well, maybe not so fancy, I don't know what you call it, redneck engineering or whatever, to get that hole drilled at an angle, but it was, I forget what angle it was. I don't know if I even figured it out, but what I ended up doing is I measured the approximate angle from an inch out, and then I just kind of calculated it out, and then I had a 1/2 inch lathe bit, just a square piece of key stock basically, that I set on my table, and I was able to, over 8 inches, and in that 1/2 inch bit, I think it was 577 thousandths that I tilted this piece up right at the hole to get my angle that I needed. So hopefully I'm fairly close. I guess my only thing is I had to compensate a little bit because I'm not quite down all the way back here yet, so my hopefully my hole ends up being pretty close in the right spot. But what I'm going to end up doing here now is I got my hole drilled, so now I can take my, I got a 5/16 bit, and I'm going to plunge that down into the hole. I'm only taking, you know, a 30-second off of each flute when I'm going down in that hole. So I'm not cutting, you know, I'm not trying to drill a hole, I'm just widening the one that's there, and then I'll be able to drill all the rest of this out. I got my depth set. It's off my first cut here, off that shoulder. I'm 150 thousandths deeper than this shoulder here, so I'll go down. I don't know if I'll go all the way down. It's a good 1/4 inch or so. I might go halfway down, mill most of it out, and then continue down the rest of the way, and then mill the rest of it out. But I'll put some cutting fluid on here, and then I'll cut a little bit. Stop it right there. That's not all the way down, but I'll lock my quill and cut quite a bit of material out here. So with this little mill, I'm not cutting all that much, so it's kind of boring just sitting here watching them drill bit cut. So I'll finish this up, and then we'll come back when I'm just about done. Alright, so there I made my first pass. I went down maybe about 10 thousandths past my step cut here. My step cut here on the outside. So what I'll end up doing is I'll go down my, plunge down my pre-drilled hole there once again and go down to my final depth of about a 1/4 inch. These corners here aren't precise. I mean, I'm not too worried about them. I don't need them to be square, so I can just round them out and it'll be alright. Alright, here's the somewhat finished product. I'll get a little, you can see I got a step right there, and this comes all the way around. Here's my hole, here's my step up, which was my initial step down, but this should be done. It's actually pretty smooth in there, which is great. Now what I'm going to do is the tang on these receivers have a little recess back here. It's 100,000s or so. I'll just go back in there and bore it out. My indexing to clamp this receiver on this bar stock is going to be mainly up here. This is where the rails are going to sit. Up here where my lug will sit flat against here. Then of course these the action screws. So this is all flat, and then so it'll sit on there, and then this will center it side to side for the trigger recess here on the receiver, and of course the other bolt action screw. What I'll also do is I'll put a couple screws in here, and then I'll end up putting a plate in the middle of the receiver to clamp the middle of the receiver down, which will stiffen it up even more when I'm working on it. So, but I'll probably bore this out a little more here, or mill it out, and I'll test my receiver on here and see how well it fits. Alrighty, so here it is after I got my back end machined out. It ended up turning out pretty good. I'm not a professional machinist, so if somebody has some comments or concerns, well, you can let me know. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, I guess. But here we go. I'll grab a action here quick. I have one here. It's a little modified, but it should serve our purpose. We'll see how close I am. And as I thought, see, everything else fits pretty good, except back here where I left these a little tight. So I'm gonna come back and I'll let it focus here a second. I'm gonna come back and mill these out. Maybe take, I don't know, 10,000ths off of each side. Because here on my trigger guard, that slot fits. I'll let it focus here. That slot, the trigger guard slot, fits in there. So I left it a little tight, kind of thinking that it might end up doing that, but we'll stick it back in the machine, mill it out a little more, and check it out. Alright, so here's the finished product. As you can see, I gotta make some custom bolts yet there. I recessed them at the bottom, but we'll take this apart here to drill some holes to mount it on my mill here. Put one here, and then I'll put a couple in the middle here to clamp the rails down. But there's the finished product. Almost finished. You can see it's not perfect, but I'm not a machinist, so there's the front side. I counterbored that a little bit because it's got a little flange there, and I did screw up a little on my back hole, but from side to side, it's, you know, my hole is oblong, but I milled it forward to backwards, so it's side to side it's good, and then it's really tight up on the front here where it's supposed to be, so you know, I just got a little bit of excess room in the back there, and that's not a big deal with this fixture. There we go. So there's a fixture for a receiver for milling, and this is another receiver I got here. So as you can see, it fits in there pretty good, nice and tight. Got room in the back there, but that's okay. When I clamp it down, it'll fit snug in there. And then this right in here is where I'll drill a couple holes here, and then put a plate across here, and that'll be that's a fixture for receivers. And then what I can do with this is I can modify this fixture a little bit to take a couple different receivers. So what you can do with this is, after I get it in the mill, I can drill and tap holes. I can mill the back end here if I need to do some milling, or, you know, mill whatever if I need to do some shaping. Probably not what most people would ever need, but I do quite a few of these guys, so it's going to come in handy for me. So here you go, out of a chunk of aluminum, a drilling and tapping, well, a milling block, whatever you want to call it, work on it. So